All right, everyone, this is an election built largely on lies from the left, and we're seeing another major one right now. Like, they've also been lying and telling us that Joe Biden just has a stutter. I'll be, for the BitChute exclusive today, explaining a little bit about why that's definitely not the case. Breathless Biden, the new meme, is born. It's a double doozy, maybe even a triple doozy this time. But you've got the most major lie of the election thus far, in that the Democrats, and by the way, Twitter, and I'll get into that as well, because it harkens to censorship and election interference in the literal sense. The new lie is that Trump was trying to get people to vote twice. Now, keep in mind this. If you had a group of people voting twice, and the ballots were actually tabulated, would this not, technically speaking, prove what Trump has said about the problematic nature of having unsolicited absentee ballots sent to numerous homes in the first place? Supposedly, it's impossible to do that, and the system works perfectly. It's just like in 2015, we were told over and over and over in the run-up to the general election, Trump is evil, bigoted, wrong, and a conspiracy theorist for suggesting that the U.S. election will be anything other than totally ironclad. Now, this was said by the corporate media with a chuckle at Trump at his expense, by them at the time, and by the DNC as well. It was said with a straight face because they expected to win the election. They did not expect Trump to win. I'm honestly, genuinely in belief that they had no idea that that was going to happen. They believed their polls. They didn't even think it would be close. Whoops. And then so they had to do a 180 the second after the election was over and start claiming, oh, well, it was interfered in, there was vote rigging, Russia, ballots, voter suppression and stuff. See, the Democrats every 4 years worry about voter suppression, and the Republicans every 4 years worry about voter fraud. Neither one of these things is particularly common. I know the old stereotype is like dead people vote Democrat. That does happen, but it's not that common. It certainly wouldn't be at a level to flip a state. With unsolicited absentee ballots going to millions of additional homes without proper cause, the problem is that it could happen. Now, I'm going to read you several tweets here verbatim, and we're going to talk about Twitter as well here. The first tweet is not tweet blocked or anything. Based on the massive number of unsolicited and solicited ballots that will be sent to potential voters for the upcoming 2020 election, and in order for you to make sure your vote counts and is counted, sign and mail in your ballot as early as possible. On election day, or early voting. Now it trails off. Now there are two other tweets, but first let me show you what Twitter says on these tweets, because it has blocked them from being shared. It's basically you have to click view in order to see it. This tweet violated the Twitter rules about civic and election integrity. However, Twitter has determined it may be in the public's interest for the tweet to remain accessible. Now, again, as before, when they've interfered in our normal political process, Twitter specifically, in the past, Twitter does not have the legal authority to remove any of Trump's tweets. They can't. Legally speaking, they would get fucked by a federal judge if they did. By the way, that would be clear editorializing, I would argue, of course. This is as well. You are essentially throttling the President of the United States, who happens to be the chief executive of the country that Twitter, by the way, pays taxes to, supposedly. You are throttling his ability to get a message out to the American people. I think that sets not only a poor constitutional precedent, but is absolutely outright dangerous. But that's just my opinion. Of course, call me old-fashioned for believing that corporations shouldn't be censoring people. Anyway, we're going to view the second tweet. Go to your polling place to see whether or not your mail-in vote has been counted. If it has, you will not be able to vote, and the mail-in system worked properly. If it has not been counted, vote, which is a citizen's right to do. If your mail-in ballot arrives, and here's tweet 3, after you vote, which it should not, that ballot will not be used or counted in that your vote has already been cast and tabulated. You are now assured that your precious vote has been counted. It hasn't been lost, thrown out, or in any way destroyed. God bless America. It is not immediately clear that this is actually an illegal thing to do. Of course, I'm not an expert in election law. If you cast a vote and it has not actually been counted, would it be voter fraud to then go in person and at least attempt to requisition a ballot? Because if the system has worked properly, you shouldn't be able to get one. And that's what Trump is pointing out, and it is technically correct there. you wouldn't be able to get a new ballot because they would check in the system and say, well, you've already voted, so you can't have another ballot. It's not clear that you're breaking any law in so doing, and certainly for the idea that it is interference in the U.S. election for Donald Trump to suggest that there should be some sort of check system in place to make sure that your vote has actually been counted when you've got an overload of those votes for the first time. This is going to be the first election in which there's actually a significant proportion of ballots mailed in because of this stupid pandemic response. There will be millions more mail-in ballots. Are they going to all be counted? You have tens of thousands of them being voided already in various states across the country. What was it? I think the other day, like Iowa voided 50,000 some odd ballots. In Iowa, 50,000. I would think this is going to be a little bit of a problem. You've got people talking openly at this point. Well, on election night, it's going to look like Trump won, but you're going to have to wait because the mail-in ballots will come. Dude. I hate to sound like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, but I'm a little bit suspicious when people are openly proclaiming such a thing because it looks sort of like the Epstein deal, right? He obviously got killed by somebody else and didn't commit suicide. Even the final analysis of the actual autopsy there, according to certain individuals, looks pretty ironclad that somebody strangled him to death. That being said, yeah, it's a little bit fishy. It's sort of like, you know, and I think the elites like to do this a lot. I'm not talking about Democrats. I'm talking about people in rich and powerful positions. I think sometimes they're crazy enough and they get off on having someone very transparently whacked or you know, fucked up in some way, like, oh yeah, I'm sorry your mansion burned down. It was me. And they do it in such a way that they're not legally culpable and have plausible deniability and a good alibi, but you know that it was foul play. I think that happens, and I think that might be what we're seeing here. My advice to Trump fans is you must vote. Don't be a soft Trump fan because the facade is being pulled back right now, and it's honestly quite frightening because we're seeing that there really is an entrenched group of people that are sour about the fact that for the last few years, some of their efforts have been stymied by someone who came from outside of the political system, and they're salty about it. And so they're lashing out and having a tantrum. They're basically commanding riots. They're doing everything they can to fuck the economy up. It's fairly transparently obvious that they just want Trump gone because they want to go back to the old norm of waging limitless wars for Raytheon stock, and screwing people's lives over and fleecing America, basically. That's what they want. They want to go back to the old status quo of slowly selling our nation down the river. Globalization basically means enslaving the whole world, when you think about it. That's why we got idiots like Elon Omar right now talking about, oh, we need to end subsidies for the fuel companies. Yes, great idea during a recession, by the way. Let's raise the cost of every good and service in the country by double digits. People will sure be able to afford that, Elon. It's a bunch of bullshit. So yeah, this isn't, it's an out-and-out lie. I mean, it's a dirty, total, pants-on-fire lie. Trump did not tell people to vote twice. He told them to vote. But if your vote hasn't been counted, aren't you still eligible to vote? You know, if the ballot got lost, if it got folded, spindled, and mutilated, if it just didn't get processed, it's sitting in an alleyway somewhere next to a homeless dude who's using it to wipe his ass, wouldn't you think you have the right to have your vote actually counted? And North Carolina, I mean, why would he be choosing that? It's a swing state. It's basically a 50-50 proposition. I think Trump won North Carolina by, what was it, half a point in the last election? It's sort of like Virginia. That nexus of the country really is the new swing area. And then, and of course, to the Democrats' dismay, Wisconsin and Minnesota now appear to be newly minted swing states. Much to the Republicans' dismay, Arizona technically joins that group too. And almost Georgia, actually. That last election was bullshit. This election, it technically is in play. Oh, the Republicans aren't happy about that. That's a lot of electoral points. But yeah, so fact check. No, he was telling people to make sure that their ballots had actually been counted. That is their right as citizens. If I file a mail-in ballot, I expect it to be counted, tabulated. I expect things to be proper. My vote should count. If I have reason to suspect that that's not the case, I should go there in person, and if my vote's been already counted, they're not going to give me another one because my ballot's already been counted. It's not really voter fraud. You're not actually casting a second vote, and if a second vote has been counted and the first one is tabulated, the second one is invalidated. It's not clear that that's a crime. If you go there and requisition one, the system is supposed to make sure that you're not getting the second ballot. The individual, there's no way for them to fact check whether it went through. That's basically what Trump's talking about. That's about all. Peace out.